Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about variations of the phrase, I have been fortunate enough to. I'm still in the very, very tail end of a cold, so I apologize in advance for that. This is a phrase that I see all the time in my students' business writing, professional writing. And unlike some other phrases that I've made videos about, things like, for instance, to whom it may concern, this one doesn't really bother me that much. So there's a lot of variations of this that I see. I have been fortunate enough to, I have been lucky to, that one is more occasional. But there's other variations which are escaping me right off the top of my head. I'll probably remember some more of them as this video goes on, but basically these things typically appear in job application letters, sometimes in things like grant writing or personal brief biographies, things like that, often for professional purposes, like LinkedIn or creating a professional website, things like this. It's not a bad phrase. It's also not that necessary. So the upside of saying, I have been fortunate enough to, or I've been lucky to, I've had the opportunity to, is another variation that I see a lot. The benefit of this is that it shows gratitude for one's experiences. And that's a good thing, right? That's positive. It's polite, it's positive in the sense both of it's a good thing and it's a positive rhetorical technique. It shows that you are an upbeat person. And so that's good. Employer, again, the main place I see this is job application letters, and employers like that kind of thing. They like a sense that the person that they would be hiring will be grateful for this position, will be grateful for the opportunity to work for them. And I put opportunity in scare quotes there because a job is actually not. A job is not a reward for you. A job is the opportunity primarily to make money for someone else. But set that aside. So that's the benefit of it, right? That's the reason why it's actually not a bad phrase to incorporate into a job application letter. I have been fortunate enough to work in this position where I developed these particular skills, these particular abilities, etc., etc. Yeah, that's a fine formulation. It's not massively, massively important. Employers are not typically going to make hiring decisions based on whether or not they perceive that you will be grateful for the job. It's kind of irrelevant to them. Provided they assume that you will actually take the job, which not all employers assume, and that they assume you would actually stay in the job, which not all employers assume, but which is something that's kind of important to them. It doesn't really matter to them whether or not you're grateful, whether or not you're happy, etc., etc., as long as you are productive within that job. Now, there is an argument to be made that saying, I have had the opportunity to, or I have been fortunate enough to, I have been lucky enough to, whatever it is, shows that you do approach employment with an attitude of beneficence and positivity. And if they are concerned about whether or not you would likely stay in this position, which, especially if you are overqualified for the job, is something that may very well be a discussion concern for them. Showing that kind of gratitude can actually strengthen your case. The downside of it is that it's additional words that don't convey a massive amount of meaning. I don't think that's hugely detrimental, because usually that phrase can just be cut out. It's one of those things in business writing that you can just delete it, and the sentence is often still grammatically correct or can be corrected with minor revisions. So I was fortunate enough to work in can be cut down to just I worked in which position I developed X, Y, and Z skills that you, the employer, want. So in that case, you're cutting about 3 words. And it is important and beneficial to be concise and clear in business writing. There's an argument to be made, and I think it's not a bad one, that showing that gratitude is worth the few additional words. But one thing I am going to say about this, one caveat to stick on this, use that phrase once in an application letter. That's the norm. Most people intuitively would only use that phrase once in a letter, but I recently saw an application letter from one of my students where it was used 3 or 4 times. And I think it was actually the same phrase. I think it was, I've had the opportunity to. Variations of it would be slightly better, but you don't really want to rely too much on that formula within a single letter. It's much, much better to say, I'm using this once, in the same way, actually, that I would say the phrase, as my resume shows, or as my resume demonstrates, or something like this. I think that's a really good phrase to incorporate into an application letter. You don't want to use it more than once. The same basic logic applies here. Like, you get diminishing returns on it for what it does, is really the thing. So in the case of expressing gratitude for a previous position, the more you do it, the less benefit there is in terms of establishing that you're a person who's grateful for opportunities, right? The first time you do that, great. Oh, wow, this is a person who's grateful for work experience. The second time you do it, yeah, okay, we already knew you were grateful for work experience. And so at that point, it does become just using extra words to say the thing without that much additional value added. So I would tend to use it once if you're using it.